It was in the 1960s that achievements as well as origins began to make people think of Matt Busby, Bill Shankly and Jock Stein as a natural triumvirate. Each of the three former miners from the same few square miles in the west of Scotland coalfield had by then successfully taken charge of a great football club in a great city. And in every case, Busby at Manchester United, Shankly at Liverpool, and Stein with Celtic in Glasgow, the man seemed so perfectly suited to the job that there was talk of marriages made in heaven. In the Liverpool of the 60s, Bill Shankly's ability to be ordinary and magical at the same time, the Messiah next door, made him irresistible. The lyrical intensity developed in rural Ayrshire had found the ideal big city home.
I'm one of the people. I'm just one of the people that stands in the cup. They think the same as I do, and I think the same as they do. So that it was a kind of marriage of people that liked each other.
He was certainly the right man in the right place. I think Liverpool needed that sort of projection that Bill gave it. Liverpool in the early 60s was a very vibrant city as the Beatles came along and what have you. And I think Bill played his part in all that, actually. And it wasn't only a projection of the club, it was a projection of the city as well.
How did people at Everton feel about it?
They didn't quite know how to handle it. And I think they had a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions because Harry Catterick was at Everton, who was successful but was very dour type of character compared to Bill. And I don't think they were happier, even though they were successful on the playing field, about how Bill was always scooping them with the publicity.
I mean, these men were great. They won the second division, they won the cup. They won the second division, they won the league, then they won the cup, then they won the league again. That was 4 championships, 4 trophies they'd won in 5 seasons. So, I mean, that's a lot. So that roused up the people. And they were heroes, and they were really great players.
So the championship is won, and only the lap of honour remains. Ron Yates, the genial Scottish giant of a captain, carries a fan-made replica of the trophy, but it doesn't matter. The 53,000 salute the few who've won the most grueling football competition in the world. Not until they reach the dressing room do the roars subside.
I think the fact that you beat us here in the cup was responsible for us winning the league.
Yes, it's true, but still, you did well. You're a great side, Bill. You deserve it, mate. I couldn't go a better block.
Well, we're happy about it, Tommy. It's amazing.
I was manager of Chelsea at the time, and Shanks was at the game, and I said, "Where's the manager?" He says,
The manager of the opposing
team.
Yeah.
He says, He says, he's not here tonight, he says. I said, oh, he must be scouting then. He says, no, he's got the flu. I says, you know at the match? He says, no. He says, can you imagine you and me missing the game with the flu? He said, we were dead. We'd been in the coffin. They'd have a little glass in the lid of the coffin so we could watch the match. Some of the statements he came away with was unbelievable, really. You know, I don't know where they got them from. I thought
It would have had a wiper on it.
Oh, we went in case it was raining, you know, but we windscreen wiper, you know, and he'd be cheering from them.
I'm quite certain that the football will definitely improve from now on.
Do you think it will become more of an entertainment and less of a sport?
Well, for the public, in general, football is an entertainment. For the fanatics, it's just the same as me. It's life or death.
He had changed to the old red strip, of course, and he said, if we dress you in red and send you out there, they'll be
it was
frightened
right.
to death.
That was one of his stories that was true. You know, he put me all in red, and he said, I'll go on the pitch, you know, and you come down the stairs, Ron, you know, and I got off strip with the red and the boots on and everything, just after training, ran out, and I just ran by him and he went, that's it, we're going to play in that. He says, you look huge in that. He says, we'll frighten him to death. You know, and we started playing in all red.
I deal with everybody as I think fit in my own mind, and whether they like it or whether they don't doesn't make any difference to me. But I think it's the study of human nature that's the main thing. I mean, every player that comes here, from the day he steps in here, the minute he steps in here, he's being watched, he's being scrutinized. And then we're reading him like a book. Then in a month's time we may know everything about him, all his weaknesses and all his strengths. So from the day he comes in here, if he thinks there's nobody watching him, he's got a surprise coming to him. So that we study them. And I could write a book about every player here. I could tell you the colour of every one of their eyes. So this is the thing.
As Busby slowly recovered from the frightening damage done to his formidable constitution in the Munich plane disaster, he realized that for a man like him, the only possible reaction to such devastation of a great team was a resolve to build another one.
I came back a few months afterwards, but really I wasn't well for the best part of 3 years, I would say, before I really recovered and got my real strength back.
What was the process of getting this strength back? Was it the fact that you were in football, doing something that you wanted to do?
I think at that time the main thing was being occupied, Cliff. There were so many times your mind went back to the bad, the unfortunate things, the wrong things, sad things. And it was a good job that I went back and forced myself to go back, because I become occupied and I got this obsession again that Manchester United were going to the top. And it just occupied me all the time, morning, noon and night, this obsession to try and get them back.
Busby, whose faith in a youth policy had produced the great team destroyed at Munich, emphasized his flexibility by accelerating the rebuilding program with the transfer of Dennis Law from Torino for £115,000, a fee that broke the British record.
There wasn't going to be many clubs who could afford to pay the fee. Maybe Arsenal would probably be at that time, and the only other one would probably be Manchester United. So, although I'd been with City, I was coming back to Manchester, which was a place that I'd really enjoyed living in and the people. So, coming back there, when Busby's trying, you know, he's rebuilding his team, to be part of that was going to be something which we would not know about, of course, until a few years later. Because when I joined, we nearly got relegated the first season.
When Matt was exerting authority over you, you know, in any good team you have a lot of very strong personalities. And we all know that Matt
had the reputation of being able to do more with a look than a lot of managers could do with a half an hour of shouting.
Matt never shouted, sure. I mean, I'm sure Dennis would say the same thing as I'm going to say. We had so much respect for Matt. We looked at Matt as with awe, you know, and if he said something to you, that was it.
First of all, I look for ability. That is essential, natural ability. I see natural ability. I like to see people that can play, they've got control, they've got a mind. I love to see a player with vision. Somebody can look at a place and look at a field and determine what he's going to do. I love to see a player playing with heart. And I also naturally want them to be of character.
United continued to play great football, but their fans had to wait until the 39th minute for a first goal by Dennis Law.
Return to me. Please come back, Bella Mia. Hurry back, hurry home to my arms, to my lips and my heart.
Celtic, who had rescued Jock Stein's playing career by signing him from non-league Llanelli in Wales and found themselves rewarded with success under his captaincy, could not avoid being impressed when he moved on into management with Dunfermline and Hibernian and made a considerable impact on shoestring budgets. As English clubs, notably Wolverhampton Wanderers, began to take notice, Celtic decided they had better recall Stein to the colours.
The club weren't going very well. And I just thought that if I could achieve for Celtic what I'd achieved for Hibs, I would be doing a good job for them. The reason of me coming here was at that particular time I had a good offer to go to England. And I discussed it with the chairman of Celtic at the time, and he said out the blue, how would you like to come back? Well, I didn't think it would work because Celtic have never, I don't think they have ever worked really with a manager having full say. But I was assured that I'd be given full control of the side. What I wanted to do was to prove to the people I was capable of taking full control. And I came on the basis of that, and it wasn't long until I got that.
When Stein became manager of Celtic in 1965, he was only the fourth appointed by the club since its formation in 1888. More significantly, he was the first Protestant to hold the job. Being as light-heartedly mischievous as he was seriously opposed to any hint of bigotry, Stein liked to point out that at that stage 25% of Celtic managers had been Protestant. The really difficult precedent for him to establish was sole control of team selection, but he did that before board members could blink.
When he arrived as manager, what impression did he make on you, Jim?
Well, I got to know him quite a bit, and I just liked the man, and I liked his intelligence, which was not purely confined to football. And I liked the ability to talk straight to him. He would look you straight in the eye and tell you where he thought you were wrong, even forcibly now and again.
So there was no hint of the deferential in his attitude to directors or anyone else?
No. At the same time, no, but he was very punctilious about presenting his directors to others, particularly on the continent, and giving their place.
I've noticed that, and he was a great man for respecting people if they deserved respect, if they behaved well.
That's right. I was very conscious of our place in the scheme of things as far as outsiders was concerned, but when he was in the privacy of the boardroom or the club, he would say what he said quite unmistakably. You have to know Stein, it was Stein's personality. Stein talked in rhetorical questions, he put answers into your mouth, and that's what he did with the board. He could handle people.
For an ordinary guy, he was extraordinary. It really was. He could bluff his way through anything, like he put on a good phrase.
Hurry back, hurry home to my arms, to my lips and my heart.
That year we won the cup. From that moment, I mean, we've got a picture in there in the office of that particular team winning the cup. We've had greater moments since that, but I think that was a key moment when we won the cup that day. On that particular occasion, it broke a barrier for lots of players. Lots of the boys, like Stevie Chalmers, Billy McNeil, John Clark, Bertie Auld, Bobby Murdoch, they had all losers' medals. They had nothing to look at as a winner, and they possibly felt that once they'd reached this peak and got over the peak of winning something, there were other things to be won.
Solo tu, solo tu, solo tu mio cuore.
I've always felt when I was playing myself, I wanted always to try and do as a manager, treat the players the way I'd expected being treated myself.
I don't treat them just like players. I like to think that I'm part of them and they're part of the club that they play for.
Whether you're a good player or whether you're a bad one doesn't make any difference. If you're a good man, then we'll help you.
As football men, Busby, Shankly and Stein represented a human bridge between eras. Their experiences as players were governed by the feudal system structured around the restricting of footballers to a maximum wage of £20 a week and the tyranny of one-sided contracts. They were forward-looking men, but they carried the baggage of their upbringing in the game.
Players in those days were employees, and directors let them know that that's what they were, employees. And I thought it was unbelievable that internationals should be desperate for their wages on a Friday, and you know, to me it wasn't right.
Shankly had ended his playing career at Preston in dispute over money he felt was due because of long service. In his future life as a manager, his suspicion of directors would deepen and become permanent.
People running the game here had no idea about football. I mean, it was prestige in their particular area. They were able to perhaps supply business colleagues with a few tickets, and they got this sort of great feeling about being directors of football clubs. But they were martinets. Chairmen in those days were complete martinets.
As manual workers in Britain battled to improve their wages and working conditions, they were unlikely to see professional footballers as fellow victims of economic oppression. Even among the players themselves, there were some who thought they were lucky escapees from the hardships of their class. And the fight against exploitation in the game was slow to gather the force needed for reform. A few outstanding talents broke away from the time warp of British football to join foreign clubs. The most successful emigrant was John Charles, who became an enduring giant of the Italian game. When the injustice of the maximum wage was removed in 1961, after an onslaught of player power orchestrated by leaders such as Jimmy Hill and the Secretary of the Professional Footballers Association, Cliff Lloyd, it was a jolt not only to the financial assumptions of clubs, but to the inbuilt values of managers. Busby, Shankly and Stein were all bound to consider themselves fortunate to be able to use football to gain freedom from the harshness of life as miners. They were not always at ease with the new levels of expectation among their players.
Now, before the maximum wage was abolished, there used to be a meeting every so often with the players, and Matt used to say, you know, this maximum wage is ridiculous. You lads all should be on £100 a week, you know. And then when the maximum wage was abolished, the first offer for Manchester United was £25 a week and £5 appearance money. That was the first.
Nobby Stiles, who was rated highly enough to be a fixture for both Busby's Manchester United and Alf Ramsey's England World Cup winners, had his prime a generation too early to get rich from the game.
And this might well be the next one. There's Styles onto it now. Can he get a shot in? He gets a shot, and there is the ball.
Man United players were regarded as seriously underpaid in relation to the other top players in England, and your case has often been mentioned as a man who, because of his love of the club and his concern with getting out there and playing, was almost exploited.
I don't know. Obviously you'd like to earn more wages and whatever. I can't say what other players earned. I don't know what other players earned. I know at that time that I got into the England side and I was playing for England and whatever, and my name was getting a bit more and whatever. Maybe I probably did get underpaid and whatever, and I should. But that's.
But you think maybe Matt was underpaid?
I always remember Matt Busby. He put Dennis Law on the transfer list. You know, Dennis Law. I don't know whether Dennis asked for more money or whatever. Dennis Law, was the king, Dennis, and Dennis went on the transfer list. And I always remember him saying it. He would say it everywhere. The club is bigger than anybody, and that includes himself. And I do believe, yeah, and I do believe I believe they lived to that maxim.
By coming from the working class area that he did, I think when the time came for the players to be rewarded, and could have been rewarded better than they were, he didn't respond in a way that I would expect a working class man from his background who had seen injustice and gone through injustice as a player himself responded in the right way.
Why did you think that was so?
Well, first of all, because of the wages.
No, why did you think he took that line that surprised you?
I don't know. I think he was. I mean, all managers are employees of clubs, and what he was doing was the best for Manchester United. But I think there was a balance there that could have been more beneficial and generous to the players. But I don't know why. I don't honestly know why he took that view. Matt had enough presence, as you say, to say to the players, well, that's what it is for Manchester United, and the players signed it.
I know for a fact, talking to the Manchester boy like Dennis and Paddy, and these old managers, the Matt and Shanks, got together and said, look, we can't go and give these fellas more than £100 a week and whatever. And they kept those two clubs on a very tight budget.
You think there was collusion?
Oh, aye, there was.
I was captain, and he came to me and he said, look, we're going to try and organise wages. He said, you sort it out for me. Now, I'm here to play football, so I thought, what am I going to do? I called a meeting with the lads, and Stevie Highway was there and all that, and we discussed it, and we came up with one or two little things. So I thought, well, I'll go and tell him. And I can still remember it, still walking down. And he said, no, you've had a word with the lads. I said, yeah, and this is what they would like and suggest, Well, he's got it. And they're still walking, just, I can still see him now. Yeah. Nah, son, nah. He said, you know what, Smitty? He said, you could cause a riot in the cemetery. Just like that. I said, what are you talking about? You've asked me to do that. I've done it. You're rejecting it. You haven't. So we started an argument walking across.
He didn't like money. He wasn't interested in money. I think the thing about today's football he wouldn't enjoy was the money side, the agents and whatever. He didn't like you talking about it. He was such a purist about football. He thought everyone should work and play for nothing. And it's a nice idea. I mean, it's obviously these days sometimes the money does spoil it. But he would have turned his nose up at agents saying, give us this. I mean, I asked for a rise 30 quid once, and then he said that was the worst.
To make your wages 30 quid?
Aye.
Not a rise of 30 quid?
No, and then he started off by telling me what a good player I was, and he deserved a rise. And I asked for £30, and he said, well, no, you're a bit slow, son, and you're not so good in the air. So I had the idea what I meant. Thanks very much.
The top wage I ever had at Liverpool was £40. And I finished in 1971, yeah.
40 quid
40 quid was my basic wage. Amazing, isn't it? When you think about it.
But those men were very badly paid themselves.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and money didn't come into it. Their backgrounds were very austere backgrounds, and they played for the love of it, and we all played for the love of it. We were the same, but we thought we might get another few bob more, And Shanks told me years and years later, he said, I should have given you boys a bit more.
You were saying there, Jimmy, that you and Billy were spared that knowledge of what it was like to work the shift. But Big Jock had worked plenty of shifts.
He never let you forget it.
I was just
I remember the time we were doing it, forget what it was, in the B10:30, he was sitting and we're ordering up whatever we're going to order up, and he says, excuse me, waiter, could have a steak Diane, please? And the big one was in the next table, and he get up. What? Come here, sir. He says, just you gave him chips, fish and chips like the rest of them. He said, Mary Helen, you're into steak Diane.
He used to
never let you forget.
See if you were away anywhere, and obviously you went to good hotels, good quality stuff, and he used to come round and wait till you order, and wait till it was delivered at the table, and he'd come round and he'd go...
Tell him what to take it off.
He'd look at him and he'd say, fillet steak? You never had a fillet steak in View Park in your life. You never had fillet steaks in View Park. Now, look at prawn cocktail and say, hey, miners in Bellshill wouldn't eat prawn cocktails. What you want? He didn't let you forget your background, I'll tell you, that's for sure.
But we never forgot about that. I think that was the main thing as well, you know, the boys. Always remembered, and I think that was a great Stein thing as well, was the roots and remembering what you came from.
He had a reputation of being a very strong disciplinarian, which I guess it was true up to a point, but it wasn't quite as simple as that. His tactic generally was to discipline those who would accept discipline, and that did no harm to those that weren't too good at accepting it, because they were listening also frequently. And he's told me that he would pick a fight with some guy in the dressing room, deliberately needle somebody that he knew he could bully, but he was really wanting to get the message to that big guy over there that wasn't too good at picking fights with, you know?
Yeah.
So he had this skill of balancing, understanding people's personalities and knowing who you could push against the wall and who you had to go along with.
But he liked this big strong arm aspect as well. I like to be considered to be a real disciplinarian. And I remember one time, you know, I remember lots of times, but I remember one in particular dressing room. He was also a very passionate big man, as you well know. And I admit I'd done something stupid on the pitch, and of course he was giving us bellises and he was tearing lumps out me in the dressing room, and after the game, I've got my gear off and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this, you know. And normally he would tear at you for 2 or 3 minutes and then it would be fast, but I'm answering back, which really is stupid because you couldn't win an argument with him anyway. And I said, oh, I've heard enough of this, I'm away. And I just walked past him and jumped into the bath. Next minute, he's in the bath beside me, but he's got all his clothes never on. He's still got his shoes and his socks and his gear on. Oh, I think I went too far this time.
Jerry's gone now, Willie. Good ball.
Busby was not renowned as a tactician, but in addition to being one of the genuinely great motivators, he was an outstanding judge not only of individual players, but of how disparate talents would complement each other.
Charlton to his best. Third and Law in the middle. Charlton lurking on the penalty area. There's Law, and it's 3-0. Beautiful goal by Law.
In his Manchester United teams, virtuosity flourished within a framework of cohesion.
Free kick then to Manchester United. Oh, and this may be the first one. And it is the first one, and it's Law.
The essence of the playing style of Shankly's Liverpool was, as he said, a kind of jockstrap socialism, an all-for-one and one-for-all commitment made overwhelmingly effective by the quality of passing and the intelligence and tirelessness of the support for the man on the ball by everyone else in the team. And of course, among Liverpool defenders, abrasiveness was permissible, self-indulgence was not. Tactically, Stein was the most astute of these three managers, a master of ploys and counterploys. But he had a romantic's love of the positive option and was never happier than when his men were sweeping in a controlled flood into the opposition's penalty box. At their best, his teams played with unquenchable verve, perfectly representing Stein's ideal of blending athletic speed and competitiveness with imagination, delicacy of touch at close quarters, and exhilarating surges of high skill.
Hoot is number 3.
Won't you come out to play? Dear Prudence, greet the brand new day.
Just 2 years after taking over at Celtic, Stein proved himself one of the undeniably great managers in the history of football by steering his homegrown team to the European Cup final. Until then, no British club had reached the final of Europe's supreme competition. How Celtic dealt with the might of Inter Milan in Lisbon will be remembered as long as the game is played.
The Lisbon team was a miracle in terms of modern football, in that all of you came from within 30 miles of Celtic Park. In fact, there was only Bobby Lennox from Saltcoats in Ayrshire who was outside about a 15-mile radius.
Aye, that's right. It just seemed to happen, Hugh.
Not even in east of Scotland, man, Bill.
No. Well, Ronnie certainly stayed in Edinburgh at that time, but he was a Glasgow man. That's right. I've thought about it often. I mean, the potential was there. The players in the main were there, but really, if Big Jock hadn't come back to Celtic Park, it would never have been realised. Those players would all split up and disappeared here, there, and everywhere. He was very, very clever and very astute in the early days because he recognised immediately what he had, and he didn't try to disrupt it. He didn't try to fill our heads with a load of nonsense. He just wanted us to express ourselves.
I remember in the tunnel, you know, you were so close to them, you could smell the amber salera off them, you know. You were looking at them, they must have thought we were a circus show. Myself, Lennox, no teeth are in, and you know, right across them, you know, with the tans and the big smiles right. And the hair gel back.
And the fancy names, you know.
But then we heard me 10:30 at the top of the queue, and he's giving it mouth to this, hey, big fella. She's me man. You know, for Mary Hill, you know, the wee garden that, you know, and he hey, big fella, hey, wee man, she's a Romero here. Hey, behind you're in trouble, he says, where you going to that party? He says, your heat'll be burling. He says, tell your ma you'll be late tonight.
But we feel we have a duty to play the game our way, and our way is to attack. We don't just want to win this cup, he said. We want to win it playing good football, to make neutrals glad we've done it. Those aspirations might have been wrecked by the early penalty that gave into the lead, and justified fears that the Italians' notorious ability to strangle a game would be decisive. But Celtic's spirit was unbreakable, and they were thoroughly dominant long before Gemmell blasted a thrilling equaliser. Throughout the second half, Stein's promise to attack was fulfilled with such an exhilarating bombardment of the Inter goal that a breakthrough had to come. When Chalmers turned in the winning goal, neutrals right across the football world were glad. Celtic supporters too were rather pleased.
I think the achievement at Lisbon is a one-off. It can't really be equalled. Jock really focused the whole Celtic history on Lisbon, and I think that Celtic fans thereafter thought of Celtic as an awesome outfit and Stein as an awesome leading figure. I think that's probably when you'd really get into the heart of the Celtic fan.
That was when, he almost seemed superhuman to some of the supporters at that time.
Well, actually, I can stand here today and say that I still think Jock Stein is superhuman. I honestly mean that.
I think Celtic winning the European Cup had a terrific regenerating effect in Scottish supporters' sense of the worth of their own game. And I think, there are, pretty obvious reasons for that. That they did it not only at the highest level, but they did it, as people love to tell you here, with a team that came from within a 30-mile radius of Glasgow. No question. No importations were required. Our boys did it, and they played it also because they felt they played the game in a style that they loved to watch. That they didn't win by attrition. They won by flourish and flair. And it is still much talked about.
I was the only manager of an English club that was there. None of them took the trouble to go there. I mean, they hadn't seen the Celtic, and I had, of course. But I was in the dressing room after the game, because I remember Jock, I think he'd just come out of the bath, he was sweating as much as the players. And with Hugh McIlvenney, and I said, Jock, you're immortal now.
May I extend to you, Jock, your directors, Billy and your players, and your staff, sincere congratulations and on a great performance.
Thank you very much, Matt. It gives us great pleasure to accept this trophy, not only on behalf of our club, but on behalf of Scottish football. It's good to see us there and being the first team, not only a British team, but Scottish team to win this trophy. And naturally, I'm quite sure that the good wishes of the Celtic Football Club, the players and Scottish football, we hope that the next hands at the European Cup are in their ears. Thank you very much.
I'm wondering whether there's anything left, really, for you to prove.
Well, I've always been European Cup conscious, and I still feel that way. I still want Manchester United to be the best team in Europe. And the only way they can be the best team in Europe is by winning the European Cup.
It was 10 years since Munich. Matt had come back from, in an almost impossible position. I believe that the bus had had last rides 3 times, and so for him to come back the way he did to that, and for it to be the 10 years, it was special because we, a lot of them, we'd grew up with him. Paddy Cradden had come in, and Dennis and all them, and it was as though we'd wanted to do it for the boss, and that was it.
It was his team. They were his boys. You know, I mean, that's the way they used to talk. You know, my boys. David Pegg, Tommy Taylor, myself, Mark Jones, came from mining families. He obviously had a kinship with that because he came from that sort of family himself. When he signed a player, he made sure that the parents knew that he was going to look after them. And suddenly, this had happened. You can imagine, really. I can't ever imagine how he handled it. He must have been really strong mentally as well as physically.
Get right behind Manchester United, and it's in, no, it's a goal! Best Charlton in the middle, so to is Aston. Charlton, another! He's got another! It is, it's all over! Manchester United have done it! And here comes the man that they would have for Prime Minister, President and everything, Matt Busby.
I can only remember him coming to you, and it was like that we were coming to him.
Yeah.
And we were coming to him, and he was typical of it. He was coming to you, you know. And yeah, there was that sort of coming together, as you say. It was like, yeah, we've done it, and we've done it. You know, we've done it for him because he was Manchester United, and that was it.
Liverpool's emergence as by far the most successful of all British clubs in the European Cup would occur after Shankly ceased to be manager. But the supporters, to some of whom he tapped out letters on this typewriter, using only the red ribbon, idolised him as the founding father of the club's greatness.
As we approached Lime Street, Bill suddenly tapped me on the shoulder, and amidst all this celebration, said to me, son, who's the chairman with the sayings, the Chinaman, what's his name? And I've gone, Chairman Mao. That's him, son, Chairman Mao. And I've thought to myself, is he really with us? Is this for real? What is he asking me this sort of question for? Because as soon as we got out onto the steps at St. George's there, his opening line was, Chairman Mao has never seen the greatest show of red strength. Well, 400,000 people went crazy. It was absolutely perfect. And at that moment I thought, yeah, you really do know how to handle people, don't you?
I think
he used to practice in front of a mirror. He would never admit to that, but I'm positive he did. A couple of times when we were away on the continent, that I would go into his bedroom unexpected and catch him, and I'm sure he was rehearsing. But again, he used to love those press conferences abroad as well, particularly in the Eastern Bloc countries, because he was a very fair man, Bill, and he thought that the Russians at the stage were dominating those countries and shouldn't be there. So this was his opportunity to tell them how things were being done, not as they should be done.
When he expressed his sense of football as the game of the masses, the Protestant Shankly chose an interesting analogy. There's a holy trinity, he told me: the players, the manager, and the supporters. Directors don't come into it. They are there to sign the checks, not to make them out. We'll do that. They just sign them.
What was the basic problem with directors as far as you could define it, Peter? Because there's no doubt at all that every time he got on the subject, he turned a little vitriolic.
Yeah, he'd had some bad experiences before he came here, I think, with boards of directors at other clubs, and they'd been small. Here, he did strike up a very good relationship with one particularly, and possibly two, but others he hadn't a lot of time for.
You were once quoted as saying that there are only two teams in England, Liverpool and Liverpool Reserve.
Well, the Liverpool Reserve, when they're not so far away, because they've won the championship of their league 4 years out of 5, and they're leading it again.
So it comes really quite surprising to hear you say that Celtic, Glasgow Celtic, is the most successful team in the world.
Glasgow Celtic's the most successful football club in the world. Yeah. Nobody can dispute that.
What about Ajax, Benfica, teams like that?
Well, they haven't won 9 successive leagues. Celtic's nearly certain to win the league 9 successive times. And they've been in the League Cup 10 successive years, final. I mean, who can do that? They've won the European Cup, and they've been in and all that, and they've played all the teams. They've beaten Leeds United 3 times out of 3.
The minute you start achieving things, the minute you start becoming successful, the big test is, how far are they going to go? Where are the signs I have to change? How can I keep this thing going? Because the expectancy level gets higher and higher and higher. You got to a point where it says, well, this team's had enough. Gemmell went, Wallace went, Auld went, Murdoch went, and he brought in Dalglish, Macari, Hay, McGrain, you know, marvellous balancing act, you know, and still kept it going, still kept the thing going.
Oh, steady, leave room for Dixie.
Great managers often have a fatherly attitude to their players, but the indulgence they can show has severe limits. If success is to be maintained, there must be ruthless pruning and replacement. Ruthlessness may not have been natural to these 3 men, but they learned it well enough, even if they sometimes had roundabout ways of applying it.
I never ever thought about not being in the team. Funny thing, you know, when you're in the team, you're in the team.
But even for a man who had been fundamental to the creation of Shankly's Liverpool, the moment of rejection had to come.
And I went, what do you mean I'm not playing? Have a look at that. And I wasn't playing. Stormed into the dressing room. You know, Shanks wasn't there.
Why do you think Bill, who struck all of us as a very courageous guy and a very forthright guy, could back away from something like that?
Only after, you know, some years after it, I thought about it, and I thought, well, maybe he didn't want to face that problem. He didn't want to face you. Yeah. He didn't want to see your disappointment.
It's almost like a relationship breaking up.
Exactly. I mean, I could understand it later on in life, looking back on it, that yes, you know, he must have felt that he's breaking up his team, you know, when he had to do it with Roger Hunt, with myself, with Ronnie Yates, you know, and he had to break his team up and bring new players in. And he must have felt it would just be like a family, breaking up his family. And I don't think he wanted to, he had the courage really to do it in a face-to-face manner, and he did it the other way.
Do you think that when the European Cup was finally won, that there was a sense of an end of an era at Old Trafford?
For me, my point of view, no. I think it should have been the beginning, really. To be fair, when they won the European Cup in 1968, we should have won it after that in 1969, where we equalised with a legit goal at Old Trafford when the referee didn't give it. That would have made it a draw in the game. We'd have gone and beat Milan, and we'd have gone on to win.
The team at that time as well, for by one or two of us, was quite a young side. I mean, you know, when you think of George and John Aston, Brian Kidd...
Well, all of a sudden we came from being, or could have been, the best team in Europe again. The team collapsed. We weren't in the league, we hadn't won the league, we weren't now in the European Cup. And 2 or 3 years later, it all disbanded and, you know, things changed.
Matt was more or less quitting then as well, if you remember, because he'd been speaking about straight after the European Cup final that he was going to retire, which was a sort of blow to everybody. And then again, who's going to follow him?
By the time Matt Busby was knighted in the happy aftermath of the European Cup victory of 1968, he and Manchester United were national institutions. When he became general manager in the following year, such a confident organisation was almost bound to seek a new team manager from within. The choice was Wilf McGuinness, who had grown up with the club through the era of the Busby Babes and had graduated smoothly from player to coach.
Right round. Come on.
He said, Wilf, I want you to be the team manager. I'm moving upstairs. You're in charge of all the team affairs, the training, the coaching, the picking of the team. And he said, I'm here to help, and that's how it was. Unfortunately, that was a grey area then. I didn't know how much he wanted to do and how much I didn't. And in the end, to the players, they still called him boss. I never got the sack from Manchester United. I could have had my old job back. And he tried so hard to do it in a nice way, but I made it that difficult for him. He had to do it in a hard way in the end. And in the end, you know, we had to go at each other, if you like. I'm talking about after several days when he told me that the directors, when I had the manager's job there, the team manager's job, the directors wanted him to come back, and he said it in such a nice way, and I accepted that side, but the hurt came, and I wanted to know why, so I stayed for a while after I was demoted, and I got angry, and he must have got angry with me, because I knew at the end that how hard it could be.
We all come into the game when we're 15 or 16-year-olds, and with a love for the game. It's not the financial rewards, there's an innocence, and there has to be an innocence about it that brings you into the game. It's not the real life. It's football. You go from 15 to 35, and you don't grow up in lots of ways, because it's season to season, and the game is the thing that matters.
It's a private world.
It's a completely private world. It's an unreal world in that sense, and I certainly, the finances don't come into it. I know from my experience it didn't. I never thought about money when I was playing. And I think the managers, when you finish playing, the people who have love for it want to stay in it. And they still have that innocence going into management. When you go into management, it's a different thing to playing, where you look after yourself and your abilities. When you go into management, you're now dealing with directors who are in the real world. They're in the business world.
Even in the most democratic football gatherings, Busby's presence gave him an unmistakable authority. But it was the inevitability of his elevation to the boardroom that persuaded many on the outside that any successor in the manager's chair would be subjected to special pressures. Busby was one director no manager could ignore. Frank O'Farrell was next to feel the heat of the legend's proximity.
I'm getting a bit tired of a lot of things. I thought when I gave the managership up, I was going to get a bit of peace and contentment. I'd be able to enjoy my football, but unfortunately this hasn't been the case. This is the second time I've had to come in to fill a gap until an appointment is made. So one feels that one is getting a bit tired of it all.
It is, of course, because of your experience that you've been asked by the board to take over again.
Yes.
Do you accept that in some way this must be an inhibiting effect on those who have tried to succeed you?
I can't understand that. I can never understand this situation and all this controversy about Sir Matt Busby's image and Sir Matt Busby looking over somebody's shoulder and Matt Busby's doing this and doing that. I can tell you, I never see anything here. I haven't seen 1 minute's training all the time. All the time Frank Gore, all the time since the last appointment was made. I don't interfere, I go along there. I can never understand it. Why all this is put that I am, as if I was interfering.
If I wanted anything at all, I could go to Matt urgently and say, Matt, this is what I'm proposing to do. And I always went to Matt because Matt was really the gaffer.
I think he fancied, you know, that life had been hard enough and he'd done his bit, you know. You get on with it and do it if you can. But whenever there was a little crisis or the team were playing badly, people would go to Sir Matt and say, you know, what about this? And he wanted to leave them to it and get on with it, I think.
The manager's office at Old Trafford seemed to have been fitted with a revolving door. Sir Matt wanted Jock Stein to put an end to all that, but the big man could not be wooed.
I've had opportunities to move, good opportunities to move, moves that would have been better financially to me. But I've got ties here, I've got ties that I've got my home here, my family prefer to be here. But the most important tie here is that I like to be manager of Celtic, and I like the people I'm working with. It's as simple and straightforward as that. I like the players I'm working with. The directors I work with are very good as well, so I've got no complaints. And the most important thing is, I like the people who support us. I like to see them getting a bit of success. And I'm egotistical enough to think that if I'm here, we'll have reasonable success anyway. Maybe wrong in that, but I'm quite happy with it.
A manager is a very, very specialised profession that in 10 years of success in industry would have a very, very high position in that industry. In football, if you have 10 years of success, you're actually more insecure in the 11th year than you are in the previous 10. In other words, you don't actually build anything. If you win the double this year, if you don't win the double next year, it's not as good a season as the previous season.
You build vulnerability.
Yes, and you also, I think, from the director's point of view, there's a lot of glory attached to it, and people who are in industry put a price on glory. In other words, there was another thing in football. You could have the glory, but you couldn't have the money as well. Don't be greedy. And when you're a manager, no matter how successful you are always an employee of that company.
The money is never a big thing with him. He used to say that, he said, you know, when I was with Celtic, because I was quite well known, I mean, he wasn't quite well known, he was internationally famous. Because I was quite well known, people tended to think that I was well off. He said I was never well off. He reckoned, I didn't ask him what he was paid, of course, but he clearly was never paid very highly. Certainly not to match the kind of qualities that he brought to the club.
Stein never really was troublesome about money. And maybe unconsciously we took advantage of that, though
I remember, straight enough, Bill Shankly at Celtic Park getting me in the corridor and telling me what a gem we had in Stein to make sure I would look after him. And I did, to some extent, try, but probably not to the extent that it should have been done. I would like to think that I knew Stein well enough that if he'd felt so badly, he would still have spoken to me. But he may have thought that other directors would have resisted a kind of claim for additional money.
You look at the new managers in the game, and they're millionaires. The new managers are millionaires. If you think of Kevin Keegan and Robson and Hoddle and
Jerry France,
you know, they are. I mean, I'm saying they're millionaires. Let's put it this way: they're very wealthy boys from their career in football, and good luck to them. Whereas our managers, we're talking about the great Scottish managers, would finish playing with nothing. I mean, I finished playing with nothing. Believe me, I lived in a clubhouse all my playing career, never had anything. We had no pensions, we had nothing. We had a terrific life as a player, don't get me wrong, and I wouldn't swap it for anything, but we didn't finish with any money. And those old managers were the same, so we were all, as it were, of a similar background, and there was no gulf between them and us, and everybody understood each other.
Shankly, the crowd singing, and surely no manager has ever had a rapport with his supporters such as Bill Shankly. Other hands available behind Keegan. Beautiful ball to Smith. He didn't have to move to get it. Ball to Smith. It's highway. Liverpool showing the party pieces. He wasn't offside. Smith. Yes. Keegan second. Newcastle were undressed.
Bill Shankly's retired.
He hasn't. You're having me on, aren't you?
No, I'm not having you. I've just been to Anfield, honest.
Who said?
He said, he just announced it at lunchtime today and the board were with him.
Bill Shankly?
Bill Shankly is retired.
Yes, I heard that, yes.
You heard that? How do you feel about it?
Well, I think it's a bit of a shock, but I think he's a very wise man, really. At his age, anyhow.
Because he wants a rest.
He's on top, so he may as well more or less kind of move on while he's on top.
How do you feel then?
It's terrible.
Is this what we're going about? More or less about Bill Shankly?
What, you wouldn't leave?
He's left.
Honestly,
he's retired. Honestly.
Give us a paper. It's not in the papers yet. He's left, really.
Don't believe that. Come on, let's go to class.
Don't believe that.
I was shocked. I was totally shocked. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I thought, well, why has he done that? I mean, they had just won the cup.
I never found out, and Bob didn't find out, or anybody found out, why he wanted to retire.
I still don't know why Bill went. He said he was tired and he wanted a rest. I actually said to John Smith, who was fairly new as chairman then, leave it. John Smith hadn't the relationship with Bill that I had, and I thought I might be able to persuade him. And I talked at length with Bill and told him that the board were desperate for him to stay in any form he wanted, and he could have any job he wanted. He could be consultant, he could be general manager, he could pick his own team manager to be with him. He could simply do what he wanted to do. He could come in 1 day a week, 5 days a week, pick and choose just what he wanted to do. But Bill was absolutely adamant.
That was how much you thought of him and his contribution.
It was, yeah. And I thought, because, as I say, the relationship Bill and I had, which remained until he died, that I would persuade him, but I couldn't. And if I couldn't, I knew that nobody else could.
I gathered later on that it was supposed something to do about Shanks never understood money. Never understood money, pensions, and it was to do about, he was worried about if he worked on, seemingly he wouldn't get his pension. I mean, it was just a nonsense thing. So all I needed was somebody to say, Bill, you can carry on working as long as you like.
A car crash on his way home from holiday in the summer of 1975 took Jock Stein close to death and left him so ravaged that effectively he was out of football for an entire season.
Right to McDonald. Douglas.
He made a dramatic return, immediately adding a 10th league title and another Scottish Cup triumph to Celtic's honours. But a sad twilight was falling over his career with Celtic. The club had decided that a younger manager should take over. They asked Stein to join the board, but tainted the invitation irretrievably by suggesting he should take responsibility for the development pools, should become a fundraiser. Were they making an offer they knew he had to refuse?
In hindsight, the pools were not for him, though he did take a great interest in it. We saw him as a kind of super salesman, and it was very valuable to the Celtic. It has been down through the years, has been the mainstay of funds for the Celtic. It was not a trifling matter. It was a serious aspect of being a director.
But he saw it as divorcing him from the football.
Well, you see, there was the
vital thing.
Well, now that you mention it, there was a problem because Jock dominated everybody, and therefore we've got a new manager, and it was felt that Jock should sort of hang back for a little while.
Stepping away from all he had created at Celtic was always going to be painful for Stein, but the deepest hurt came from the conviction that there was no genuine depth of appreciation of what he had achieved. Handing over to Billy McNeill, who had been captain and central pillar of his greatest team, was no consolation.
When you went, Billy, after your playing career and managed Aberdeen and then eventually came back as manager of Celtic, did that make your relationship with Jock difficult?
I felt the relationships had altered before that, Hugh, in actual fact. I thought towards the end of my playing, Jimmy and I actually left Celtic at the same time. I retired and Jimmy went on to Sheffield United. Yeah. And I felt that the relationships had become difficult. Perhaps it was the fact that we'd all been there so long together and we had seen, and then I think...
Is that the natural sort of breaking up of that team, Billy?
Well, no, it started to break up the team long before that. I felt it started to break up too early, but that was a personal thing. It may well have been an affectionate thing as much as anything else. But what happened was after us came a tremendous group of boys, the Douglases, the Lou Macquarries, the Davy Hayes, the Josh Conleys.
Right.
I mean,
to be honest as well, Billy, it must have been great for them coming into the side, because we brought them on, so you bring in two of them or three of them at the one time, and just, I mean, what a learning it was for them, you know.
But I felt, you know, Jock found them harder to handle. I don't think he quite understood them.
Thinking back to that time, I am convinced that Stein resigned from the Celtic board and became manager of Leeds United because he believed staying where he was would have compromised his integrity as a football man. He had been with Leeds less than 2 months when he accepted the job many felt he should have been offered long before, the managership of Scotland.
He was always there, you know, this overpowering bearing on the place, you know, that they could never get away from. And some of them did fairly well. You know, Tommy Docherty, Ron Atkinson. You know, they won cups and things like that, but never won the title. Never really got into the Champions League, which is the big one that Matt always considered the most important one. Until Alex, really.
Alec Ferguson, with his roots in the industrial west of Scotland, where he completed his apprenticeship as a toolmaker while playing professional football, was in many ways the appropriate heir Busby had sought for so long. Sir Matt lived to see Ferguson bring the league championship back to Old Trafford after a gap of 26 years.
The minute he finished as a manager, his life was finished. His life was finished. He'd get up in the morning and he'd no purpose in his life. He'd put on his tracksuit and he'd wander around to Everton's ground to talk to them, because it's right over the fence from his garden. He'd just go over there and talk to them. With his tracksuit on? Aye, put his tracksuit on. He'd have games of football with kids up in the park just at the end of his road. He'd go down first of all, which he did. He went down the training ground at Liverpool, and of course, the lads are calling him boss. Bob is there, he's the boss, you know, and there was a lot of conflict, and it wasn't right, so he had to be told in a nice way, Bill, you know, it would be better if you never went down the training ground. So that's when he started wandering over to Everton.
You try and think about it and why he might have retired, but we never did find out. And at the end of the day, when he died, I feel that he died of a broken heart. Why, I don't know, but there it is. And that was very, very sad.
That, you know, the sense of deprivation when he left his club, that had been so much of his life, it just did him in.
Did him in, because he had nowhere to go. His football was his life, and that was it.
A natural affinity made Jock Stein enlist Alec Ferguson as his right-hand man with Scotland.
He used to say, you're always losing your temper. You know, this is...
Where did he get that idea?
I don't know. I said, what were you like when you were young, you know? And he'd have you up, when we used to meet with Scotland, say on the Saturdays, and he was sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, Joe, I've got to take the train in the morning. He says, oh, you're all right. Steely, you know, old Jimmy Steele, he said, go and get another pot of tea. Another pot of tea, and we talk football and football a bit. But the one thing I must say, that, and I found it very, very praiseworthy of him, when I used to try and quiz him about how he achieved it at Celtic, winning that European Cup, with his own input, you know, he would put it all on the players, you know.
Yeah.
He would never take any of the credit himself. And he'd never say a bad word about Celtic.
Well, you've said to me in the past that in his case it was genuine humility. He said that
he was... I couldn't get him to say, well, I did this for a reason, and that was it. No, we Jimmy played well that day. Or Murdoch was in control, or Big Billy was dominant. You know, it would be thrown back towards the players, which I found quite commendable.
And he had this thing about him where everybody was frightened of him. Not in a fearsome way, but everyone was aware of him. You know, I mean, he had something about him that, and we were experienced players then. We had won European Cups, you know, maybe 40 caps. Kenny's got 80 caps. And
you didn't fancy offending him. Having taken Scotland to the World Cup finals in 1982, Stein found that qualification next time depended on avoiding defeat at Ninian Park in Cardiff in September 1985. With Wales a goal ahead at half-time, the strain was immense.
It hadn't been going well, and Alex Ferguson was there, and he was in. He never really asked too much of anybody. And at half-time, you know, he actually turned round to both Alec and I who were standing and said, you know, what do you think? Do you think we should be changing anything? And he was looking for help at that point, and he was obviously under pressure at that point. And I'd never seen him do that before. And he'd certainly never asked me about, what I thought and what we should do.
Scotland have a penalty. And remember, if they draw this game, it probably is enough to take them through for a playoff. That's how important this penalty is for handball. Davy Cooper, and he scored for Scotland.
After Stein suffered a heart attack near the end of the match, there was a period when those of us crowding the small entrance hall of the main stand were lulled into false hope by the understandable vagueness Whatever may be said about the professional lives of Sir Matt Busby, Bill Shankly and Jock Stein, it is surely true that they represent an expression of values accumulated over generations in the mining communities that produced them. As I have said earlier, one of the most basic gifts they brought to the management of football teams was a profound comprehension of the huge power of genuine camaraderie, an understanding of teamwork learned from people whose lives could depend upon it. The working and social environments they sprang from no longer exist in this country, and today football men tend to be shaped by purely football experiences. The very harshness of the shared origins of these three men enabled them to tap richer sources of strength. They had substantial enough natures to have made an impact in languages other than football, but it was the one most accessible to them, and they made good use of it. I'm glad I was around when they had their say.